Hey girl, hey girl, hey, hey, hey girl, hey, hey, hey. How y'all doing? I'm so glad to be back with you. It has been a while, I'm not gonna lie to you. I am working on my consistency. I'm telling y'all, I'm working on it. I really don't have an excuse for why this next podcast episode took so long to come in, besides me really trying to recalibrate some things, me really trying to decide how I'm going to do this and how and when I'm going to take this serious. And the answer is now. Just having to take things to another level, especially with consistency and really truthfully, and I'm going to do another podcast on this, taking myself out of the equation and focusing on what you need, what I believe you need, and even getting from you what you feel that you need during this time when it comes to you being your best self. I'm going to talk about this a little bit today when it comes to 2020, but I want to apologize first for my inconsistency with uploading a podcast, you not knowing when you can hear from me, you not knowing when I'm going to post anything, it just kind of being up in the air, and that's not right. There are things that I know God has given me. There are things that I've experienced that I want to prevent you from experiencing. And I can't do that if it's all up here in my head and it's not coming out of my mouth. I'm not engaging with you. I'm not anything to you. So for that, I apologize. And I'm going to do another podcast on what was revealed to me about myself, especially when it comes to me starting this business of Hey Girl International, and what made me make the adjustment, because I believe that that is really something that not only I struggle with, but a lot of people struggle with. And when we hear the term self-centered, we always think that everything is about me, but not from the standpoint that I realized that I was living in every single day. So I'm gonna talk about that another time. Today, I wanted to really get on here because we're not really at the halfway mark anymore, but we are coming towards the end of the year. We're coming towards a part of the year that's going to get a little chaotic soon. And so I want to give you as much hope as possible for these last few months of 2020. I don't know about you, but 2020 has been a wreck in some ways, not necessarily internally when it comes to what's been going on with my family, but just what I'm seeing happening in the world, the uprisings that are happening, the willingness to really fight back and fight for what people believe in is all happening this year. We're dealing with still coronavirus and how that has impacted not just the United States, but the rest of the world, and how that's really impacted families and countless lives lost due to coronavirus or simply just due to sickness, and the loss of important figures. When I found out Chadwick Boseman passed away, I cried. And I don't usually let me not say I don't usually cry over loss when it comes to someone I don't know. What I will say is, I believe that the impact that he left behind was so strong that losing him, it felt like within not just the Black community, but the world period, something was lost and taken away too soon. Like, depending on how old you are, so I'm 31. So for me, in my mind, I think about this from time to time. In my mind, I realize that there are certain people that I grew up seeing on television, I grew up listening to on the radio, I grew up buying their albums, buying their CDs. And in my mind, I know I have 50, 60, 70 years plus before I know I have to mourn their loss. And so great musicians, great artists, great actors, great actresses, I know that down the line, I'm gonna have to mourn them, right? That's gonna happen. So when someone is taken away sooner than I was ready, sooner than I am ready to really receive, or sooner than I am mentally ready to lose, when that person is taken away, it does something to my mind. Because for me, and I feel the same way about Kobe Bryant, I don't know about you, but I said something about this just isn't right. And I know with Kobe Bryant, for maybe a day and a half, I waited for someone to say, oh, we're just joking. Or not joking, let me not say it like that. Oh, we were mistaken. I was waiting for someone to say we made a mistake. With Chadwick Boseman, I was waiting for someone to say, felt fake news, as our president says. I was ready for that to happen. I was ready for that news article to come out. And it was almost like I was praying for it, because I said to myself, there is no way that this person is leaving this earth this soon. It just didn't make sense to me. So 2020 has really just, it's been something else. And the reason that I'm not calling it all the names I've seen all over social media is because I believe in the power of words. And I don't want to curse 2020, because I do believe that 2020 has still had some high moments. I believe 2020 is really a blessing, in a sense that, and I'm not taking away from everything that's happened at all, period, not being insensitive. There are things going on within 2020 that many of us that are cursing 2020, saying are ready for it to be 2021, we really haven't stopped to step back and say something else is happening, or something can happen in the midst of all the chaos. And it's hard to see this, and that's what I'm going to talk about today. The three things that I believe are going on within 2020 that would require us to stop cursing 2020 and start looking at 2020 a different way. Especially since we're closer to the end of 2020, we don't want to look back and say, I wish I would have. Or we don't want to look back and say, while I was at home, I wasted time. And even though it seems like it's one thing after another, there are still things we can be doing during 2020, before 2020 is over, that still sets us up for success and gets us in a different mindset about what is here and what is possibly coming, and really starting to channel and not necessarily channel, really starting to focus in on what is a possibility with everything that's going on. What could still be going on? What is something that I can create? What is something that I can change while everything else is happening? And so the first thing I believe 2020 has brought about is a leveling of the playing field. And the reason I say that is because for months, and for some it's still continuing, for months, everybody was at home. Whether you had $1 million in the bank, $1 billion in the bank, $20 in the bank, -$3 in the bank. Everybody was at home. And it gave people an opportunity to begin something they had never started before, be consistent in it, and become a voice. Someone I think about is Tabitha Brown. Right? Tabitha Brown has been consistent in her videos for years. Don't get me wrong. But it wasn't until everybody really sat back at home, that she was really pushed to the forefront, because she had prepared and she was so consistent in the thing that when everybody else was at home, people were looking for new voices. Because really, if we really think about it, in years past, 2019, and before 2019, earlier than 2019, what began to separate people was certain groups of people being in certain places at certain times. And that was kind of what identified you as being the upper echelon, or that identified you as being the part of the 1%, or that identified you as being someone of importance. And so when we would scroll on social media, we would just see these packed parties of celebrities and people whose voices, we really tap into and really put at the forefront of things. When 2020 hit, all of those people had to stay at home. And so the voices and the things that we were looking forward to seeing that made them, how can I say this, that made them different from us, outwardly different from us, went away. And so at that moment, it has become a time where people that may have had small followings got bigger followings. People that weren't doing much all of a sudden began to sell more. I've seen one business. There's one girl I follow. I bought face masks from her for my family, and she has a boutique, and the boutique started off smaller, on a smaller scale. But when the pandemic hit, she got ahead of it, and now she's being featured in magazines, and she's being featured in all type of publications online. And now people of every type of background, every type of living situation, every type of financial situation are really going after her mask and want to know more about what she's doing. And so these opportunities have almost found people while everybody's been at home, because everybody's been at home trying to find something to do, because I can't go to the beach in Cabo because we quarantine. I can't go over to Paris and flaunt my trip to Paris and show people how I'm rich and what the rich look like and what the rich do, because everybody's at home. The rich is at home, the poor is at home, the middle class is at home, everybody's at home. And so 2020 has really leveled the playing field in that everybody's ideas are now having to become fresh because of where we are right now. And so even the verses, if you've been paying attention to the verses that have been doing, they just did one with Brandy and Monica. That was birthed during the pandemic. That was birthed during 2020. That was birthed when everybody was at home, level playing field. Businesses being birthed, taken off during the level playing field, because everybody's at home, everybody's on their phone, they're looking for things that they need, they're looking for things to do while they're at home. Everybody's doing that. Whether you're a Kim Kardashian, whether you're Allyson A. Robinson, whoever you are, everybody is at home doing the same thing. So 2020 has really leveled the playing field. So if you have a business idea, if you have a podcast idea, if you have a book idea, whatever it is, a blog idea, whatever that is, go for that now. Don't wait till 2021. We waited for 2020. We was all cheering. This is about to be my decade. This is about to be my year. And 2020 shut all that down, told everybody to stay home. But just because you're at home does not mean that 2020 is still not your year. So let's start preparing you in your business. Let's start preparing your blog. Let's start preparing your whatever arena or field that you're in now before 2021 gets here, before the world opens back up. Let's work with the level playing field while everybody is in the same situation right now. So that's number one. Number two, 2020 calls you to unplug from the hustle and bustle to be with you. 2020 stopped you from getting up Monday morning, complaining about your job, hating your job, getting in the car, whining all the way to your job, whining from 8 to 5, coming back home, fixing dinner, complaining about your job, going to bed, upset because you got to wake up again for your job. 2020 stopped all of that. Now you don't have to go into your job. Now you're working from home. And now that you're home, you have to look at yourself more. You have to deal with yourself more. You have to figure out what works for you more, not how somebody else can make something work for you. Now you're trying to figure out how you operate. Now you could take more breaks because you're at home. You could come up with ways to stop your screen and be with yourself. And for some people, that was a struggle. I know for me, that was a struggle, having to be home with me, having to not go out and be amongst other people and distract myself from what's been going on with me. And sometimes we need that jolt to say, where am I right now? Where am I right now? What does my everyday life look like? Am I happy with that? And 2020 is still not over. You still have a choice in that you can change which direction you're going to go in. And that goes into my point number 3. 2020 gave you a chance to rediscover you and what you really want. When you're sitting in the house all day, I don't know about you, but my mind just runs. My mind is like going a mile a minute, just thinking about everything. Thinking about what's going on in the world, thinking about what's going on with my children, thinking about what's going on with my husband, my marriage, think about what's going on with me, think about what's going on with my sister, my mom. My mind is just going a mile a minute. And then I'm getting on social media trying to, in some way, reconnect so that way I can still distract myself from what's really going on with me. But 2020 slowed that down. 2020 stopped me from being distracted as much as it could. So that way, at the end of the day, the beginning of the day, the middle of the day, when I go to the bathroom, I'm still looking at me in my own home. Am I happy with the state that I'm in? 2020 slowed us down so that we would know who we really are. 2020 slowed us down from the hustle and the bustle and from drinking our lives away at happy hour after we were done at our jobs. 2020 stopped us from going out to the club on the weekend and picking up random people just to try to sleep our lives away and try to sleep with whoever we could so we could feel better about ourselves. 2020 slowed us down, sat us down, and said it's time to get some redirection. And if you're not careful, everything that's been happening in 2020 on the outside will still distract you from facing the person in the mirror. 2020 is your year. And I know I start off 2020 saying this is the year of purpose. And I still believe that. It came out differently, a little different than what I thought it would look like. But 2020 is still that year of purpose. It's still that year to discover who you are called to be, who you are supposed to be, because 2020 slowed you down enough for you to sit and say, am I happy with where I am? Am I happy with the direction my life is going in? And if I'm not, what can I do to change it? Everybody's at home. There's something else I can do right now. There's something else I can choose to do. There's something more I could be doing with my time. Because you sit back and you realize, man, I was really wasting time. We're sitting back and we're saying, man, I'm so bored at home. Boy came up with the song, bored in the house and I'm in the house bored. Bored in the house and I'm in the house bored. Why are we bored in the house? Why do we feel so bored? Because we were always out and about, ignoring what was really going on inside. And so 2020 is that year, I'm telling you, from what I've experienced myself. 2020 is that year where you can start to take a deep dive into your life and sit and say, what must I do to change? What must I do? 2020 has been that year to sit back and say, am I happy with my life? Or do I need to change it? There's so much going on. There's so many changes happening right now that you making a change isn't going to shift the whole world because the whole world is changing. New opportunities are popping up all the time. Industries are changing literally overnight. So what are you going to change before you get to 2021 and look back at 2020 and say, man, I should have changed A, B, C, and D before I got into 2021. People say, and people have brought up this multiple times, it was during the recession that millionaires and billionaires were made. It was during times like this when the country's money is looking funny, when different markets are crashing. That's when people have become millionaires and billionaires. So what are you going to do right now? And not saying that you want to be a millionaire or billionaire, but if you take a look at yourself, take a look at your life personally and say, are you happy with where you are? Are you happy with the individual you are? If you left 2020 right now in the state that you're in emotionally, mentally, financially, physically, spiritually, if you left 2020 in that same state, would you be happy in 2021? Or will you go to 2021 and still be complaining about life? If you know that you would, it's time to start doing some rearranging of some things. It's time for you to start really thinking clearly about what you want to do. What are you called to do? Don't leave 2020 not knowing why you've been put on this earth. Don't leave 2020 not knowing why you're here. Don't leave 2020 not knowing what you were destined and called to do, that you leave this earth empty. Do you feel like you've poured out anything in 2020 or years prior? Do you feel like you fully tapped into the gifts that you've been given? Do you feel like you're at your best self? Do you feel like you're being stretched in so many ways with the new things around you? Or are there any new things happening? Or are you still walking and dwelling in the old? So I challenge you to look at 2020 a little different after listening to this podcast. Sit back and say, what can I do to change myself? How can I change the way I'm looking at 2020 to see it as the year that I'll never be the same? What if that became the motivation for 2020? Not just, I got to get out of this year. I got to get out of here. It's 2021. I don't even care about 2020 no more. I'm throwing it in the trash. What can you do to prevent yourself from throwing away another, 3 months? October, November, December, September still, kind of. 3.5 months. What can you do to not throw away the next 3.5 months to where you set yourself up that after, when the ball drops on December 31st and they count down 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Happy New Year. What can you do to set yourself up for nothing but success when that ball drops? Emotionally, mentally, physically, financially, spiritually. What can you do? I'm not saying go and try to start a multi-million-dollar business in 3.5 months. It's possible. I believe it's possible. I believe anything is possible with God. But emotionally, how can you be in a better state before you get to 2021? Physically, what can you start doing that you have a healthy lifestyle before you get into 2021? Because whether you like it or not, problems ain't going nowhere. We just had more this year than at one time than we've had in the past. But 2021 still gonna have its problems. Are you still gonna sit back and complain then? Are you still gonna sit back and say, this is why I ain't doing nothing because everything just going so bad? I'm not gonna do nothing. I'm just sit at home. Or are you gonna take charge of the rest of 2020 and you say 2020 is gonna work for me before this year is out, and I'm gonna be better than I've ever been? What can you do to turn around and say, thank you 2020 for sitting me down somewhere and giving me a chance to get myself together? Thank you 2020 for helping me to reset myself. Thank you 2020 for getting me out of the hustle and the bustle of things to sit down and focus on my family. Sit down and sit with my kids a little bit longer and rebuild those relationships. Sit with my wife and rebuild my marriage. Visit with my mom and my parents and my sisters and brothers and aunts and uncles and cousins. And sit with them a little while longer and get to know them and rekindle some things and heal. Thank you 2020 for giving me some time to heal and to become a better me for a better future for my life and the legacy I want to leave behind. So I challenge you, how can 2020, these last 3.5 months, how can you make it work for you where you're ready for anything come 2021? Thank you for joining me on this podcast. Next week, we're going to talk about why Allyson being inconsistent. Thank y'all. Thank you for joining me. Peace.